There is a specific type of person who can walk into a crowded room and immediately know who is the most powerful person there and who is secretly having a terrible day. They do not need a single word of conversation to figure it out. For decades, we called this women's intuition or just a gut feeling, often dismissing it as coincidence or luck. Psychology and neuroscience have finally explained what is actually happening in the brains of these people. It is not magic. It is a rapid biological data processing system that you might be using without even realizing it. Psychologists call this phenomenon thin slicing, which is the brain's ability to find patterns in events based only on narrow windows of experience. In 1992, researchers Nalini Ambady and Robert Rosenthal made a stunning discovery. When they asked students to rate the effectiveness of professors based on video clips, the clips were silent and lasted only 2 seconds, yet these snap judgments matched the end-of-semester evaluations from students who had sat in those classes for months. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine that does not always need time to get the right answer. It takes a massive amount of data such as posture, blink rate, and clothing, then compresses it into a single emotional conclusion before your logical mind even wakes up. When someone says they have a gut feeling, they are not speaking metaphorically. They are describing a physiological process handled by a specific part of the brain called the Anterior Insula. This region collects data from your internal organs, including your heart rate, stomach tightness, and sweat levels. When you meet someone untrustworthy, your body reacts before your mind does. Your heart might beat slightly faster, or your stomach might contract. The Anterior Insula reads these internal shifts and sends a signal to your conscious mind that feels like intuition. People who are better at reading others often just have a more sensitive connection to their own internal bodily states, a skill scientists call interoception. Flinching when you see someone else get hurt. Is your mirror neuron system firing? Discovered in the 1990s and heavily researched through 2025, these neurons allow us to simulate the actions and emotions of others within our own brains. If you see someone smile, your mirror neurons light up the same areas of your brain as if you were smiling yourself. For people who just know things about others, this system is likely hyperactive. They are not just observing you, their brain is physically rehearsing what it would feel like to be you. This simulation happens in medjoolers, giving them an instant, shared emotional experience that feels like telepathy. If you are enjoying this exploration of the human mind, hit subscribe and the notification bell as we break down psychology and human behavior every single week. We also need to look at the darker side of this ability. Not all intuition comes from a happy place. For many people, the ability to read a room is a survival mechanism forged in trauma, known as hypervigilance. If you grew up in a volatile environment, your brain learned that survival depended on predicting an outburst before it happened. You learned to track the tiny shifts in a parent's tone or the heavy footsteps of an angry partner. In 2026, psychologists recognize this as a sign of PTSD, but it also functions as a powerful skill. These individuals constantly scan for threats and notice micro-changes in atmosphere that the average person ignores. They know something is wrong because their safety used to depend on knowing it first. Even the best liars have a biological tell called a micro-expression. These are involuntary facial movements that last as little as 1/25th of a second, revealing true emotion before the conscious mind can cover it up. The pioneer of this field, Paul Ekman, spent decades proving that these flashes are universal across cultures. You might miss them, but the people who just know you are lying are subconsciously catching that split-second flash of fear or disgust. They might not be able to articulate what they saw, perhaps stating only that you look off. Their brain registered a conflict between your smiling mouth and your angry eyes, which triggered a warning bell. About 2% of the population are what scientists call super recognizers. These people never forget a face, even if they only saw it for a moment years ago. For a long time, researchers assumed they just looked at faces more intensely. A study released in late 2025 by researchers at UNSW Sydney proved that super recognizers do not look harder, they look smarter. Eye tracking technology revealed that while average people scan a whole face randomly, super recognizers focus intense attention on the most diagnostic features, usually the center of the face, near the nose. This allows them to extract higher quality information in less time. If someone recognizes you from a blurry photo taken 10 years ago, their brain is literally processing visual data differently than yours. Science leans toward women's intuition being a biological reality rather than a myth, though not for mystical reasons. The corpus callosum is the bridge of nerve fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Research has consistently shown that this structure is often thicker in women, allowing for faster integration of the analytical left brain and the emotional right brain. This neural connection permits a more rapid synthesis of logical data and emotional cues. 2025 studies also suggest that women are socialized to rely more on these intuitive signals, whereas men are often encouraged to suppress them in favor of linear logic. It is a mix of nature and nurture, creating a brain that is permitted to trust its gut. Not all mind reading is created equal. Psychologists distinguish between two distinct types, known as cognitive empathy and affective empathy. Affective empathy is when you feel someone else's pain, such as tearing up when you see them cry. Cognitive empathy involves the ability to intellectually understand someone's perspective without necessarily feeling it. The most skilled manipulators and narcissists are often high in cognitive empathy, but zero in affective empathy. They know exactly what motivates you, which is why they seem to understand you so well, but they use that information to control rather than connect. Understanding you does not equate to caring about you. Here is the uncomfortable truth that intuitive people hate to hear. Thinking carefully usually beats trusting your gut. A major study highlighted by the Harvard Kennedy School and confirmed by 2025 research found that systematic thinking produces more accurate results than intuition when reading people. We love the romantic idea of the brilliant hunch, but the data shows that people who take time to analyze evidence outperform those who go with their first instinct. The people who claim they just knew it remember their hits, but forget their misses. This is confirmation bias in action. You remember the one time you correctly guessed a bad boyfriend, but you forget the 5 times you judged someone wrongly based on a bad mood. We all like to think we can spot a liar, but the statistics are humbling. Across hundreds of studies, human accuracy at detecting lies sits at about 54%, which is barely better than a coin flip. Even police officers and judges rarely perform better than the average person. The problem is that we rely on the wrong cues. We think liars look away or fidget, but truthful people who are nervous do the exact same thing. A 2025 study on AI lie detection found that even artificial intelligence struggles to beat human benchmarks reliably. The person who claims they always know when someone is lying is usually just projecting their own suspicion rather than reading actual deceit. Sometimes the person who claims to know things about you is not using intuition at all, but is instead using a technique called cold reading. This is the primary tool of fake psychics and mentalists. They start with high-probability guesses known as Barnum statements that apply to almost everyone, such as saying you have been struggling with a decision lately or feel underappreciated at work. When you nod, they refine the guess based on your reaction. They are not reading your mind, they are reading your compliance. A skilled social manipulator does this in everyday conversation by fishing for information and feeding it back to you as insight. It feels like a connection, but it is really just a performance. There is another reason some people seem to predict behavior so well. They cause it. If you have a gut feeling that someone is hostile, you will subconsciously treat them with coldness or suspicion. In response, they will likely become defensive or rude. You then tell yourself that you knew they were mean. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy where your intuition did not predict the future, but rather your behavior created it. This loop is particularly common in relationships where one partner is jealous. They suspect cheating, act accusatory, and eventually drive the partner away, validating their original fear. The person feels vindicated, never realizing they were the architect of the outcome. Even if you were not born with a thick corpus callosum or trauma-induced hypervigilance, you can learn to read people through deliberate practice. Medical students are often trained in clinical observation to spot disease symptoms before a patient speaks. Similarly, security professionals train to spot anomalies in crowd behavior. You can improve your own social radar by muting the volume on your television and trying to follow the emotional arc of a scene just by watching faces. By removing the distraction of language, you force your brain to rely on the non-verbal data streams that intuitive people access naturally. There is a fine line between intuition and paranoia. When the brain's pattern recognition system becomes too aggressive, it starts seeing connections that are not there. This is common in high-stress states or mental health conditions like anxiety disorders. The brain becomes so desperate to predict threats that it interprets a neutral glance as a glare or a delayed text message as abandonment. This is the danger of blindly trusting your gut without engaging your logical mind. The feeling of certainty is exactly the same, whether you are genuinely picking up on a danger signal or just projecting your own internal fears onto the world. The people who just know things about others are not wizards. They are simply observers with highly tuned biological sensitivity, whether due to genetics, practice, or past survival needs. Their anterior insula is louder, their mirror neurons are more active, and their eyes focus on the data that matters. Even the best human lie detector is wrong nearly half the time. The smartest approach is to treat your intuition as a hypothesis rather than a fact. Listen to the warning bell, but use your logic to check if there is actually a fire. Our brains are capable of incredible feats of prediction, often processing the world faster than our conscious minds can keep up. However, that speed comes with a cost. The feeling of knowing is not always the same as the truth. By understanding the mechanisms behind your gut instinct, such as the insula, the mirror neurons, and the rapid slicing of data, you can learn when to trust that inner voice and when to question it. If you want to keep exploring the hidden processes of your own mind with us, make sure you are subscribed, and I will see you in the next video.